Plant extract and plant oil soothe and moisturize the irritated skin after gold-pitted treatment, improve the skin barrier and tone. The anti-wrinkle solution also contains whitening ingredient, which improve the skin color. Gold-pitted treatment sequence is to apply an anti-wrinkle solution to the face and irradiate laser. Surface plasma lesions occur in golden particles, which create the heat to damage the keratinocyte, and the active ingredient contain antioxidant, hydrolyzed collagen, hydrolyzed elastin, and so on in the estrogen, or out to improve wrinkles and elasticity. Gold-pitted anti-wrinkle cream is a non-irritating weakly acid cream and is used as a treatment after gold-pitted treatment. It is a functional cosmetic that contains polyphenols, whitening ingredients, and nourishing ingredients to provide soothing, regenerating, antioxidative, and whitening effect to the skin. Treatment sequence is cleansing the face. If the patient have the pimples, squeeze it. Apply the gold-pitted solution on the face. Penetrate the gold-pitted microparticles into the dermis using sonophoresis during 5 minutes. It is an option. Irradiate the laser. Apply the moisturizing and calming mask. Apply the gold-pitted microparticle cream. I recommend the total 5 sessions every week. Let's see the gold-pitted video. Drop the gold-pitted solution on the face and apply by rubbing with your fingers. Gently massage on the face. After being absorbed into the skin, the laser is irradiated from the frontal area. I usually pass 2 times with the Pico 1064 laser toning, and the total number of shots is about 4,000 shots. Usually use moving method, or sometimes use stacking method. And the point of laser is until face color will be changed white pinkish. This is a 25-year-old man. After 2 and 3 sessions with gold-pitted anti-age solution, the skin tone was brightened and the white comedo was improved. Skin texture was changed smoothly. In the 45-degree side view, it was observed that the skin had become brighter and smoother. This is a 17-year-old man. After 2 and 3 sessions with gold-pitted anti-age solution, inflammatory acne and pustures were disappeared, and skin color was changed brighter. In the 45-degree side view, it was observed that the skin had become brighter and smoother. Acne erythema was improved. This is a 43-year-old man. He had melasma on the perioctal, temple, malar, and the lateral cheek area. After he was treated 6 times with gold-pitted brightening solution, skin color and texture was changed brighter and smoother so much. Melasma was almost gone. In the 45-degree side view, we could observe that melasma was almost disappeared. After procedure, he said to me, after this gold-pitted toning, my face brightened faster and the melasma improved better than when the face had done only laser toning before. This is 71 years old female. She was performed gold bead anti-wrinkle treatment, and after 8 sessions, her facial wrinkles were improved and her face became slimmer. She said her skin tone had also become brighter and smoother, and her friend said, "Your face is smaller." In the 45-degree side view, you can see better wrinkles around the forehead, nose, and eyes. It can also be seen that the skin texture had improved. Before and after image comparison was made using a 3D imaging device called Morpheus to see the change in facial contours. As the procedure is repeated, we can observe that the facial line becomes slimmer and the skin texture improved. As the gold bead treatment was repeated, facial wrinkles around the forehead, eyes, and mouth were improved. ISO gold PTT is an upgrade second generation gold PTT treatment method. It is a treatment for not only acne, but also melasma, wrinkles, and elasticity. The difference from the first generation is that it shows better treatment result.
Posterior area inject and then subcutaneous layer, subdermal layer, and then molding the skin and tissue. Lift and lift again. Inject the PDLA filler and mold. Inject the filler and mold. Subcutaneous layer, subdermal layer, and then this is for natural cold rejuvenation and lift and lift augment the malar area. Inject the PDLA filler and liftly move inside the tissue, and this cannula tip dissect the subcutaneous fat tissues and the muscular layer and the more deep area tissues, and small amount inject inside and mold. This is for nasolabial fold. Sometimes patients have the nasolabial fold and have the crease. Crease cases. I also use for hollow cheek and subzygoma depression. Hollow cheek and subzygoma depression injection layer is the subcutaneous layer. Subzygoma area is very odorous area. So dissect with cannula and then inject the PDLA filler is more safe.
Cells need the proteins known as caveolins. Almost all cells of the skin have such structure. That means fibroblasts, keratinocytes, adipocytes, endothelial cells, and macrophages. All of them have this structure. What is special in these invaginations? Why it is very important for the skin physiology and skin aging? They are not only needed of cellular volume regulation, but they are tremendously involved in the signal transduction processes, as well as in the process of endo and exocytosis. So exchange of molecules between the cells. If you will consider one alveolar, you will see the receptors of the cells are concentrated in this structure.
And hold the face.
Production of the cell.
This is
regulate the matrix and that means these structures are involved and regulate the cleavage extracellular matrix.
Frontal eminence.
They regulate.
Firstly, inject the area, dissect
and inject,
and then
subcutaneously inject. And
mold with
provide
this is
57 minutes for the feedback case. After suggestions, frontal four lines are much equal. Crease and volume is augmented. The crease is more disseminated. Glabellar flow lines and the nasal dorsal improved.
And the perioctal linkers are also improved.
This, if the concentration of the structure on the surface is very high, which is the case in skin aging, you will see it a little bit later, then the receptors will be trapped in the structures, pulled into the skin,
into the cell, and then degraded in the cell. After these, the cell cannot react to the molecules from outside.
Without this reaction, no production of collagen. From this point of view,
use a cannula for safety. Inject layer by layer to reduce the side effect and to get effective result. We can combine the laser, HIFE, RF because PDLA filler is heat stable.
Is methyl beta-cyclodextrin
and have of day,
which disrupts cholesterol and thus also the cardiovascular structures. You will evidence interleukin-8 inflammatory molecules. They tremendously increase by reducing of caveolin.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to
Similar situation we have also for MMP, the molecules which cleave the extracellular matrix. If you reduce.
So what are these deep static skin folds? These are types of wrinkles or folds that are seen without muscle contraction or movement or at rest. These were brought about by long-term constant use of facial muscles during facial expressions, as well as the aging process where there's atrophy of skin, fats, muscles, as well as bone, volume loss, and depletion of collagen, elastin, and glycosaminoglycans. So when we see patients with these glabellar lines or folds, Botox is not the primary treatment. Instead, we recommend dermal filler to fill in the sunken or dented line and restore volume as well as skin integrity. So the question between Botox or dermal filler for wrinkles, we use Botox as the primary treatment for dynamic lines or wrinkles, and the dermal filler for the primary treatment of static or fixed lines or wrinkles. But with filler injections, specifically in the glabellar area, there could be dangers of vascular compromise, causing necrosis or even visual loss. So with filler treatments, there were already reports of devastating complications. Like this one, filler injections into the right frontal area caused vision loss 7 hours after hyaluronic acid injections. This is due to the occlusion of posterior ciliary artery and embolic occlusion of facial artery branches. The ophthalmic vessels from the internal carotid artery gives off supratrochlear and supraorbital arteries at the medial supraorbital rim and may have connection with the terminal branch of the facial artery, which is the angular artery. This picture is a complication of nasolabial filler injections. The facial artery branches into lateral nasal and alar arteries in this region and terminates into the angular artery. In the past, filler training module starts with nasolabial fold, but because of the presence of the tortuous facial artery in this area and the variation in its anatomical structure and plane of location, we have labeled this as danger zone. So we prefer to start doing injections in the cheek areas to correct nasolabial folds via the lifting mechanism. So for our patients with concerns of glabellar folds, nasolabial folds, and marionette lines, we have been recommending dermal filler as the primary mode of treatment. But considering the complexity of vascular supply to the face, particularly in the middle vertical or the center portion of the face, as well as reports of unfavorable complications, like this illustration of the number of cases from location of filler injections causing vision loss or blindness, with the glabella area as the top in the list. So glabella, temple, nose, perioral area, infraorbital region, nasolabial folds were labeled as facial danger zones. Plus the reality of anatomical variations, like these different types of branching of the facial artery, namely nasolabial pattern, the most common one, nasolabial pattern with infraorbital trunk, and the forehead pattern. Or the variation in the exact location of the angular artery as it courses through the nasolabial fold, from deep plane to a superficial plane, or whether it crosses the nasolabial line medially or laterally, or it doesn't cross at all. So basically, we can deduce that the glabella area, theatre, infraorbital area, nasolabial areas, and even the perioral regions are unsafe zones. So we should be cautious in treating these regions, especially when using our dermal fillers. Even the use of 100% guaranteed safe. With the diameter of the facial vessels, there could still be a possibility of accidentally cannulating these significant blood vessels. So the dilemma now is that our patients know about these dangers. They read a lot on the web or watch YouTube videos on filler gone wrong. You'll encounter patients saying, I've heard that fillers can cause blindness. So the challenge now comes when a patient would tell you that they don't want any fillers on their face, but would want a procedure that would give an optimal result. So nowadays, we have absorbable suture threads, namely the polydioxanone threads, utilized for overall skin rejuvenation and regeneration. We have different kinds of these threads: mono, plain or smooth type, twisted, coiled, tornado or screw types, spring or
scaffold or braided types, and even the thick or longer ones, the barbed or cogged threads. When we insert them in the dermis or subdermis, threads are left inside the tissues to induce their effects. The effects include neocollagenesis as well as neoangiogenesis, leading to the synthesis of new collagen fibers and improvement in the microcirculation. The PDO threads are effective in skin tightening, firming, brightening, volume increase, and wrinkle lifting. So now, with our glabellar furrow and deep static lines or glabellar fold, she can insert a coin through this deep glabellar crease or line. So what I did for her initially was injecting hyaluronic acid filler and combining it with the plain PDO monothreads to correct the atrophic or scarred skin. Entry point was at the inferior border of the line of the furrow. Injection technique was vertical loaded.
Then we can further increase the mechanical stress for the cells.
During the 12-week period. Actually, the patient was telling me that she's already happy about it. So another photo, frontal view, oblique view. Now, 3 years ago, that was the procedure that was done. Now, the patient came back this year and she showed us the outcome of what was done 3 years ago. So we're actually impressed that the treated area was no longer as worst as before. As you can see, it's just a linear mark. So for now, we said that we could do another treatment for her using our PDO threads. I did again another PDO thread injections, but this time I used a thicker type of volumizing threads, the OctoTwist PDO threads, with 8 PDO strands coiled or intertwined with each other, preloaded in a gauge 19 38mm cannula. So we have more of the PDO strands in a single cannula. I used 3 pieces of OctoTwist to improve the scarred line or break in the skin. This type of multiple PDO strands has more crevices for fibroblast cells to create new fibrous protein structures that would envelop the absorbable threads. Entry point was at the superior border of the glabellar furrow, and technique is linear parallel insertion of the entire length of the cannula preloaded with OctoTwist PDO threads into the dermal and subdermal plane. This is the result immediately after the treatment. So there's somehow an improved glabellar volume and there's already an elevation of that dented mark. Patient sent a photo 23 days later showing an improvement in the scarred line. So there's somehow a reduction in that visible mark in the glabellar region. This time, let's look at how to improve the sunken under eye or infraorbital hollowness, making use of our PDO threads. Again, anatomy is very important. We must review the basic anatomical features and structures in the area. A case of a 48-year-old female who came in with dark, hollow under eye and wanting treatment to help her look not tired or haggard, but refreshed and younger looking. Instead of using dermal filler, I made use of PDO threads, screw type preloaded in a cannula gauge 29, 30 mm length. Initially, I made puncture for entry points at the inferior lateral orbital rim for the insertion of the PDO under eye threads. I used 5 pieces, inserting each in a parallel manner, 5 mm apart, and placing them in a deep dermal or subdermal plane. The placement of the threads should not be very superficial, especially if the skin is so thin, because it will be visible on the surface of a thin, transparent skin, or the thread pops out or bulges when patient smiles or laughs, or mobilizes the under eye tissues, or the threads would be visible or palpable. And these are unsatisfactory results, so make sure you are in the correct anatomical plane. This was the result immediately after the treatment. And so, there's an improved infraorbital volume and reduction of the hollowness and darkening under the eye for a better eye aesthetic appeal. Another case, male patient in his 30s with the same problem of dark hollow under eye and volume loss. He had already fillers in the past, but he was unhappy about it because of lumps, bumps, or nodules. He termed it sausage-shaped lump under the eye, and it gave him more eye bags. For this case, I used Super Tornado PDO threads preloaded in gauge 25, 50 mm length cannula, and these are thicker and longer. 5 entry points on each side of the inferior lateral orbital rim, 5 mm apart, with the insertion of those PDO threads in a horizontal linear pattern, parallel to each other in a subdermal plane. And here's the result immediately after the procedure. So the oblique view, another oblique view, and he came back for a follow-up after a month, and he was so satisfied with the outcome. There was a great improvement in the skin color under the eye, and volume was restored. So here's also the oblique view. So there's noticeable brightening of the skin under the eye and an improved lid-cheek junction. Another case of under eye hollowness and dark circles from a 19-year-old female who was saying she looks older because of her eye appearance. Procedure I had done for her was injections of low molecular weight hyaluronic filler in the tear trough region. And after that, I did insertions of dermaspring eye in the subdermal layer from the inferior lateral orbital rim via 5 entry points, 5 mm apart and parallel to each thread. So here I use combination filler and threads to achieve skin hydration, volume restoration, instant filling, and lifting of the sunken area, as well as the skin tightening, regeneration, and rejuvenation. And immediately after the procedure, we had seen the result. Now, for our final case, a 60-year-old female who came in due to deep nasolabial folds, and she wanted improvement in that area without using dermal filler because she feels her face is already puffy or heavy to still receive dermal fillers. Again, detailed review of the anatomy of the face is a must, identifying exact anatomical locations and distribution of the neurovascular structures and the different tissue layers and planes. So for her case, she wanted to improve those deepened nasolabial lines. So this part here She wanted to somehow reduce it and make it natural looking. I used here the PDO Octotwist threads preloaded in a gauge 19 50mm length cannula, single entry point at the inferior border of the nasolabial crease, and inserting the threads subdermally in a fanning technique. So the anatomical placement of the PDO threads ideally would be in the deep dermis or subdermis to be able to stimulate the fibroblast cells to synthesize collagen and elastin fibrostructural protein. In addition, since this thicker type of PDO threads, braided or coiled multiple PDO strands, must not be placed very superficially, otherwise it would result in an unsatisfactory outcome. Here's now the outcome of that procedure. So we have filled in with Octotwist PDO threads those deep nasolabial creases or lines. So there's a noticeable instant result. The oblique view and another oblique view. So very natural result and noticeable reduction of this nasolabial fold. In conclusion, deep static folds and infraorbital hollowness can be treated by non-surgical minimally invasive procedures other than hyaluronic acid dermal filler. So our polydioxanone threads can be used for the correction of those deep globellar furrows, infraorbital hollowness, and nasolabial folds by restoring volume loss, stimulating collagen and elastin synthesis, tissue matrix regeneration, leading to the overall skin tightening, firming, brightening, lightening, and rejuvenation. However, proper patient selection is important. Choose patients with realistic expectations, as well as the correct treatment approach, right concept, right method, right technique, and right anatomical tissue layers or plane for the thread insertions are key ingredients for a satisfactory or optimal result. So our goal is optimal, long-lasting, and natural results with minimal tissue trauma and rapid recovery. Again, we have to master our anatomy as well as develop our skills in doing such PDO thread insertion. And with that, I thank you for your kind attention. So I do hope that I was able to share with you some significant or very helpful treatment approaches in your clinics. God bless you all.
A doctor
With such application, if you combine them, even with single complication, you can manage a lot of different skin conditions, but by combination, this is almost infinite number. You can also use the combinational protocols for the
in my view, the most important point is area where you put filler. Most important point is area, not depth. To create a lifting effect, I think filler should be inserted in these four areas. Forehead, medial cheek, lateral cheek hollowing part, chin. Four areas. If you put a filler in this area, your face becomes tense and looks like lifting. This is a picture with a filler. Before, after. 3 area filler injected. medial cheek, lateral cheek. On the hollowing part, chin. Before picture, uneven facial line. After picture, even facial line improved further. The face line has been cleaned up and improved further. It has a lifting effect on her face. Lateral view. Lateral cheek on the hollowing portion, chin, medial cheek point. 3 point. Improved facial line, even improved further. I will show you procedure video. First, medial cheek part. The 27 gauge needle use. Filler insertion depth is just above the bone. Needle insertion and bone touch after injection. Point 1, 2. Amount used to 1.1 cc. 2 point total 2 cc. Medial check volumizing, then skin pulling. The most important point is not depth, just area. This point, first medial, second lateral. Next, chin. Use 27 gauge needle, use insertion point 1, 2, 3. Evenly chin shape. Amount use 1 cc total. Filler depth is just above the bone too. Volumizing, this skin is pulling. The smaller chin, just 1 point can. Next, forehead. Forehead filler has the effect of filling the upper face of the eyes. (21 gauge cannula use. Tissue dissection with cannula. Slowly and gentle. It can reduce bleeding. Filler depth is Gallia level. Insertion point, midline 1, 2, 3, both sides. On average, case by case, it's small different. Forehead filler amount is 4 cc on average. Forehead volumizing, eye on the skin pulling. Looks like lifting effect. A small amount evenly all over the forehead. Foot. If there's bleeding, please compression it 1 and 2 minutes. Just stop bleeding. More comfortable procedure. In my view, LRBA filler has a convenient injection filling. Total procedure time just 10 minutes. Now, if there's bleeding, just please compress it. And hand next, midline insertion point and mid portion lateral side 2. Cannula and eyebrow touch. Patient have a severe pain. Slowly and gentle is most important point. And put it evenly all over forehead. Last lateral point. It's undercover and temporal portion. Tissue is hard and gentle insertion. I used 21 gauge cannula, but 23, 25 cannula can used. Additionally, insert botulinum toxin into dummies level to add lifting effect. The point is to inject it thinly and evenly. More. It make bulle. Injection level on dummies. Full pace total 60 and 80 point. This effect to add lifting effect. One point maybe 0.1 cc. a small amount of bleeding, and hand total compression deep. It reduced bruising. The point of today's lecture is lifting effect with HH pillar. The most important point is the area where you put pillar, not depth, just area. And 4 parts: forehead, medial cheek, lateral cheek, hollowing part, thin. Forehead pillar has an effect of pulling upper face on the eyes. And medial, lateral cheek, mid-face voluming, thin, lower face voluming, this skin area pulling. Just like lifting effect with volumizing pillar. Finally, LRBA filler has convenient injection filling. Thank you for your attention.
And this is not an overnight phenomenon. It's accumulated throughout years and years of using high volume of fillers that create that kind of distortion. Because by putting into account that our face actually goes through changes because of soft tissue displacement. And because of this displacement that we see the following. And the minute that we start to put more fillers into the face, it actually makes the face even heavier. And what we're seeing is that the more you place in, the more sagging that you will see, and then there's more hollowing until, and then well, the injectors will, and what will happen is that we are in this vicious cycle of creating high volume into the face, and this is where we face the facial overfill syndrome. The other thing that we also see with high volume fillers is that it tends to create an allergic reaction or the inflammatory reaction, and some of them can be very much delayed. Like this case that it happens 5 years after injection, and this is her before the swelling happens. And what we know is that because there are certain low molecule weight HA in there, and with certain properties that actually can trigger inflammatory reactions, and it can be delayed in certain ways, and high volume is one of the things that it can possibly increase the risk of this delayed inflammatory reactions. And when we look into this delayed inflammatory reactions, we want to actually take away the huge amount of fillers, or actually to prevent it from happening by decreasing the amount and by using what we call a minimal effective dose, where we use the just right amount rather than using high volume. And what we really want to target is to look for areas that goes through changes, for instance, bone decay or skeletal bone decay, and actually replenish those areas. It can be around the eyes, it can be at the mandible angle, and by doing so, you can actually also change the muscle behaviors in these areas. And when we want to choose the products, we want products that sort of suit in certain ways. For instance, you want something that when you put in the slightly superficial area, you want something that actually integrates the tissue well, so it doesn't disperse into many places. And also you want to look into products that can actually withhold certain structures or shape. And then you also want products that can actually give you the projecting capacity. That means that you can actually project the tissue upwards. And by combining all these characters of the fillers, placing on specific areas and with minimal amount, is what I call the target specific sandwich technique. And by using the correct rheology of fillers and placing in specific areas, you can use the smallest amount to create the biggest results. So the areas that I would target is that areas that goes through biggest changes and could be a problem. For instance, a V-frame deformity due to tissue sagging, that's an area at the orbicularis retaining ligaments that are actually being pulled by soft tissues that creates a hollow here. So that's one area that I will target. The T hollow is the supraorbital reach. That's a hollowing there. You might want to fill up that area to kind of tend up and also support the muscles. Of course, you can fill up the temple area in the interfascial space. The lateral canthal area is one of the areas I see most changes with Asians. It not only changes the behavior of the orbicularis oculi muscles, but also causing droopiness on the middle and also lower face. So the canine foci is another area you want to target. So by using specific rheology, you can place in this area. When I talk about rheology, I can divide fillers into 3 different ones that you want to have. Is one with a good projection capacity, but at the same time, it doesn't have too hard of a G prime, so it's not hard. It sort of blend in very well. So these are great around the eyes. So you put it in the deeper structures of V-frame deformity, lateral canthal area, you can place it canine fossa, and even at the temple. So areas that you want to shape it up, you want something with high elasticity, not necessarily G prime, but elasticity. That means not only it has to have moderate to high G prime, it has to have a certain degree of cohesivity, so it doesn't break down into pieces when you place it there. So some products has high G prime, but it breaks into pieces and it doesn't hold for a long time. These kind of fillers is good for nose, chin, and also the T hollow. And of course, when we talk about slightly superficial area, when you want to place it as if as a soft tissue, and these are products that you want something with high cohesivity and relatively low viscosity, so it can integrate well with the tissues. And this placed around the eyes, around the mouth and lips. So these are products. How I use my TSST, or the target specific ceramics technique, is I place something with a high projection capacity with relatively low G prime. That means it has relatively a great way of blending in without causing too much of the lump and bumps. So these are placed at the V-frame deformity, lateral canthal area, and the canine fossa, as we mentioned earlier. And if you look at the amount I place in there, it's 0.05 to 0.1 cc. And this is good enough because you don't need a huge amount of products. It's placed on the deeper structures around the eyes. So at the V-frame deformity and the lateral canthal area, you want to go to the deep soothe. And then canine fossa, you can actually go superficially, because the deeper you go on the mid area, you might hit the angular arteries. So you kind of want to go slightly superficial. And the other thing is because it's easier to puncture through the nasolabial septum when you go slightly superficially. So at the temple area, you also can use products with high projection capacity with great moldability or plasticity. So you don't want lumps and bumps here. So you want to place in the interfascial space, which is a pouch, and it sort of and circulate this area, and the product doesn't migrate anywhere else. And also the forehead, you want something that has great projection capacity. At the same time, it doesn't give you lumps. And in these areas, I would suggest on the temple, not more than 0.2 cc. On the forehead, each entry, so you come in 3 different directions, and you place 0.1 to 0.2 cc, so that is good enough. So that the guidelines is always use more amount, you don't need huge amount. So when we talk about areas such as the T hollow, the mandibular angle, the nose, you want something that gives you the shape, and it's hard enough, but at the same time, it doesn't become, it doesn't break into pieces. So what we really need is something with a good elasticity. That means it can withstand shearing force and also the compression force. So these are products that with high elasticity, you place on the T hollow, you put small mount, you use something what I call the walk on the bone technique by giving 0.02 to 0.03 small aliquots of droplets of fillers, and then you kind of go around, so that sort of do not create dispersion of products or migration of products. Same to all these areas like mandibular angle, nose as well. So if you want to target areas that is on the superficial fat pads, And you don't want a product that gives you lumps and bumps and tyndall effect. You want something that integrates with the tissue well. And these are the areas and my technique of placing the lips, the pre-gel sulcus, and the submalar hollowing. So again, fillers with good projection capacity, V-frame deformity using cannula coming from the X area towards the V-frame deformity, and then to the lateral canthal area, and then the canine fossa, and on top. So we use something with good projection capacity in the deeper structures. Then you top up with something that integrates well with the tissue on the V-frame deformity, the lateral canthal area. So we talk about T-hollow, use something with good elasticity, small amount, and just now we talk about the walk on the bone technique, that you put small aliquots of 0.02 cc of fillers, and then put in 5 different areas. So why we do that is that we don't want big bolus that most of the products migrate outwards superficially, so that could cause more migration later on. And when we talk about areas that you want to go for temple, something with good projection capacity, with relatively less of G prime, that means something with a good plasticity, you can actually place on the temple and the interfascial space. So it's between the superficial temporal parietal fascia and the deep temporal fascia. So this is where you can place the fillers in between and actually sort of keep it there without having them to migrate. For the forehead, you want to go in the subgaleal area with something with good projection capacity. And again, don't use too much volume because you can cause the facial overfill syndrome. And then this is where you can actually use the sharp needle and then walk on the bone technique at the mandibular angle. Then again, each aliquot, each injection is about 0.02. So in total, it's about 0.1. Rather than giving a full bolus, you kind of want to actually walk on the bone so that it doesn't cause too much of issue. On the submalar area, you can use something with good tissue integration, like here, and then the pre-gel sulcus. Again, you can use cannula and place what I call butter spread technique, that you actually spread the products in that superficial fat pads. And lips, I actually use sharp needle, and I actually invert the lips rather than giving too much volume, especially with Asians. We don't need to put too much volume for the lips unless they have very thin lips, which is very rare. So for nose, I actually use cannula and use something with high good elasticity, and place it in between into the fat pads. So that's 2 layers of fat that I place. It's a superficial fatty layer and a deep fatty layer, and you kind of like stroke it in such a way that you build up into layers. And again, you don't need to put too much of products. I generally use about 0.1 to 0.2 cc of products in those areas. And chin as well, you want to use something with high elasticity. You place in, for female, you kind of want to go midline. For male, you want to go lateral, parallel to the corner of the mouth. And then what you do is you walk on the bone rather than giving big boluses. And these are some of the before and afters of the TSST technique. As you can see here, by giving small amount of these products, you can actually create a natural outcome. At the same time, not too much of distortion, and also it sort of reverse the signs of aging by placing on the target space that where it's strategic, rather than just for the sake of putting huge amount of volume.
So I realized that by putting small amount of volume, it doesn't create too much of migration. So the products last longer, the results last longer. But at the same time, it's you really have to educate patients that this is not to create drastic changes. You just want them to restore the youthfulness and to prevent the unnatural outcome comparing to the early techniques where you put huge amount of fillers into the face. And I like to end my slide speaking about my philosophy, especially with target-specific sandwich technique, is less is more, simple is best, and natural is key. With that, thank you for your attention. Thank you. Bye.